He earned what most considered a comfortable six-figure salary, maintained a meticulously clean home in a respectable neighborhood, and drove a 5-year-old German sedan that projected quiet competence. By all objective measures of socioeconomic success, Julian was firmly established. Yet the brutal, unyielding truth lurking beneath the surface of this manufactured stability was that he was not only broke, but functionally regressing. This chronic stagnation was the baseline of his existence until the summer of 2023, a period marked by an almost paralyzing sense of financial fatalism. And then, everything inverted. The shift was not gradual. It was a seismic lurch initiated by a single, counterintuitive principle he absorbed and applied with monastic rigor. Within the span of 90 days, precisely 3 calendar months, Julian's entire financial structure was not merely stabilized or improved. It was fundamentally re-engineered, yielding a cash flow surplus equivalent to a 20-year accumulation of diligent, traditional savings. It derived from a systematic deconstruction of his previous assumptions about money, specifically concerning the definition of an asset, the true cost of time, and the single most overlooked metric in personal finance, the velocity of capital turnover, or VCT. Before this pivotal realization, Julian had been consumed by the conventional wisdom: reduce expenditures, maximize contributions to retirement accounts, and wait. He lived in the painful purgatory of delayed gratification, constantly monitoring his spending on trivial items while completely ignoring the elephantine liabilities absorbing his future. He had meticulously calculated that, under his current trajectory, he would be truly financially independent, meaning able to maintain his current lifestyle without working, sometime around the age of 63, barring any major medical crises or unexpected economic downturns. 63 felt like an eternity, a slow-motion march toward an uncertain reward. The psychological burden of this endless timeline was the true crisis, manifesting as chronic low-grade anxiety that permeated every decision, from buying groceries to planning a vacation. The colleague, a man named Arthur, had merely scribbled 3 words on the flyleaf: "It's about the speed." Julian initially dismissed the book as archaic, filled with terminology related to manufacturing supply chains and inventory management, concepts seemingly irrelevant to a modern knowledge worker in the tech sector. His initial reaction was one of frustration. He needed immediate, actionable financial advice, not historical manufacturing theory. He was seeking a quick fix for debt, not a dissertation on industrial efficiency. Julian had been obsessed with return on investment, or ROI, the percentage gain realized over a period, typically measured in years. ROI focused exclusively on the magnitude of the return. However, the treatise introduced the concept of VCT, which fundamentally reframed the equation. VCT did not merely ask, "How much did you gain?" For Julian, the revolutionary insight was this: a 10% return realized over 10 years was functionally catastrophic, regardless of how much it swelled the initial investment. A 2% return, realized in 30 days, however, was fundamentally transformative, because that capital could be redeployed and cycled 12 times a year, multiplying the effective annual yield exponentially. The focus shifted entirely from seeking high percentage gains over long holding periods to engineering short, rapid, high-velocity transactions that consistently freed up and recaptured the initial capital stake. The asset became secondary. The liquidity became paramount. This metric became Julian's obsession. the open loop that demanded immediate closure. This meant abandoning his current slow-growth strategy entirely. It required a complete pattern interrupt in his thinking. He realized he was sitting on dormant, highly valuable skills, data analysis, project management, structuring, that he sold slowly, year after year, to a single employer for a fixed salary. His personal VCT was effectively one cycle per year, locked in by his employment contract. The most difficult step was the decision to allocate capital to accelerate this velocity. Julian needed seed capital for rapid cycling. Instead, Julian executed his first calculated risk, a move that flew directly in the face of 2 decades of conservative financial conditioning. He leveraged his primary asset, his house, but not through a home equity line of credit for consumption. Instead, he secured a relatively small, short-term loan, strictly designated for VCT deployment, understanding that the interest rate, while high, was irrelevant compared to the potential multiplier of rapid cycles. It was invested entirely in the creation of a system designed to monetize his latent intellectual capital with maximum speed. This required 3 distinct steps, all executed in the first 30 days, pushing his personal VCT from 1.0 annual salary toward a theoretical 12.0 monthly cycles. He wasn't aiming for depth. He was aiming for immediate, marketable proficiency in 3 specific areas that could yield rapid, project-based contracts. Second, he invested $4,000 into building a minimalist, automated infrastructure, a high-speed website optimized for conversion, specialized software tools for project management automation, and, most crucially, a robust lead generation system designed to identify companies needing his specific high-velocity service. This system was designed to reduce the time between inquiry and invoicing from weeks to days. Third, the remaining $3,000 was allocated entirely to targeted, pay-per-click advertising campaigns designed to reach those precise companies with a compelling offer. Specific result guaranteed in 7 days or no fee. This high-risk guarantee was the kinetic force behind the VCT engine. It reduced client skepticism to 0 and demanded a premium price because the client was paying for certainty and speed, 2 things Julian had previously never packaged. The initial feedback loop was almost instant, proving the VCT model valid. He charged 3 times his previous hourly rate for a project that took 20 hours of focused effort. He completed the work in 6 days, delivered the results, and received payment on day 28. The VCT calculation for that initial capital was astronomical compared to his previous stagnation. He had taken $10,000, cycled it through the creation of a valuable service structure, generated substantial profit, and freed the capital to repeat the process, all within a 4-week window. He had closed 2 more similar high-velocity contracts in rapid succession, using the automated systems to screen potential clients based strictly on their ability to pay quickly and their urgent need for his specialized 7-day guarantee service. He wasn't chasing large, long-term retainers. He was hunting small, immediate injections of cash flow that allowed the capital to turn over and compound swiftly. The great revelation was that his previous financial failure had been a failure of structure, not income. The traditional path dictated that he work harder for 30 years. The VCT approach demanded that he work smarter, faster, and focus solely on maximizing the frequency of profitable transactions. By the end of the first 30 days, Julian had not only repaid the initial $10,000 loan with accrued interest, but it also generated a net profit equivalent to nearly 5 months of his previous salary, all while reducing his dependency on the linear exchange of time for money. He had fundamentally broken the cycle of scarcity. The anxiety that had gripped him for years dissolved, replaced by the energized focus of a man who finally understood the true mechanisms of financial momentum. What Julian did with the now liquidated capital in the remaining 60 days of the process, how he scaled the VCT metric from a personal service structure to a fully automated asset generating multiple daily cycles, is the true core of the 90-day transformation. He had mastered the initiation sequence. The next 60 days would involve the relentless, systematic execution of the acceleration protocol, leading to the complete financial inversion that defined this pivotal period in his life. The initial success proved the thesis. Speed trumps scale, especially at the beginning. But the true mastery lies in maintaining that velocity. The environment shifted from one of desperate constraint to disciplined acceleration almost instantaneously, precisely at the midpoint mark. The crucial 45th day. The initial phase, the 45 days recounted prior, was characterized by brutal subtraction, eliminating superfluous expenditures, restructuring time management, and establishing a baseline of radical transparency regarding cash flow. But subtraction, by itself, is only maintenance. The promise of financial transformation hinged entirely upon the mechanism of multiplication, which was activated with the precision of a controlled detonation starting on day 46. This mechanism, initially dismissed by conventional financial advisors as overly aggressive or statistically improbable, was not an esoteric trading algorithm nor a lottery win. It was the ruthless application of behavioral finance coupled with high-velocity capital redeployment. The immediate, palpable change that served as the primary hook for anyone observing the experiment was the sheer, undeniable speed of the results. It defied the logarithmic curve of typical investment growth. This system, however, utilized something called the momentum metric, prioritizing the psychological victory of closing loops over maximizing theoretical long-term yield. The second hook, therefore, lies in understanding that the change was less about money and more about inertia. By day 50, the initial context, a pervasive sense of dread anchored by revolving consumer debt and stagnant savings, had entirely evaporated. The conflict shifted from external financial pressure to internal psychological endurance. When the accounts began showing genuine, measurable liquidity, not just phantom numbers, but available, usable capital, the old habits, the insidious whispering of instant gratification, returned with a vengeance. The financial landscape had stabilized, but the behavioral conflict intensified. Could the discipline forged in scarcity survive the onset of temporary abundance? Several critical loops remained open from the outset, demanding immediate closure. The first was the status of the anchor debt, the largest, most emotionally draining unsecured liability that acted as a psychological drain. Finally, the third open loop was the construction of a reliable, truly passive, secondary income stream, a genuine velocity generator that required minimal subsequent labor, designed to replace at least 50% of the individual's previous basic living expenses by day 90. The development phase, spanning weeks 7 through 12, was a relentless, almost monotonous execution of a predetermined checklist. Pattern interruptions were intentionally integrated to prevent burnout. For 3 consecutive weeks, the sole focus was on optimizing the existing income streams, not through asking for raises, which is externally dependent, but through maximizing the profitability of existing professional commitments and monetizing underutilized assets, e.g., intellectual property, specialized knowledge, or residual skills. The core strategy here involved a drastic escalation of value delivered per unit of time, effectively collapsing the temporal distance between effort and remuneration. The mechanism used for closing the anchor debt loop involved a technique that quantified the emotional burden of each debt line. The debt that caused the most stress, the one associated with the deepest regret or highest shame, was targeted first, regardless of its APR. When this specific debt was eliminated on day 68, the resultant dopamine surge, the sheer emotional relief, acted as a high-octane propellant for the subsequent phases. The financial data, now flowing effortlessly through the meticulously designed tracking system, showed that while the individual was demonstrably solvent, they were still 96 hours of continuous effort away from the final, irreversible shift. It was a moment of profound recognition. True financial freedom is not about the final balance, but about the time required to maintain the balance. The 90-day timeline, initially an arbitrary constraint, was revealed to be a psychological leverage tool. It necessitated an immediate, almost brutal pruning of complexity. Then arrived the climax, the absolute singularity of the experiment. Day 90. The anchor debt was eradicated, replaced by a meticulously structured amortization schedule for the primary residence, the only remaining liability, and one now viewed as a productive asset, not a burden. The triple-layered emergency buffer was not merely full. It was overfunded by 20%, strategically allocated across 3 low-volatility, high-liquidity instruments that maintained purchase power parity against inflation. The system, affectionately termed the velocity grid, had succeeded not through massive single investments, but through micro-arbitrage opportunities derived from the individual's unique skills, codified into scalable, digital assets requiring negligible ongoing maintenance. By day 90, this stream was reliably generating 78% of the baseline living expenses established on day 1. This meant that the individual did not need a salary to survive. They needed a salary only to expand. The individual had achieved escape velocity. The velocity grid, stripped of its dramatic narrative framing, consisted of 3 operational mandates. The burden amputation principle. Pay down debt based on psychological drag, not interest rate, to sustain momentum. 2. The micro-arbitrage asset creation. Identify 5 unique, repeatable needs within the individual's existing network or industry, and create digital or service-based assets that satisfy those needs automatically, capitalizing on the small, persistent pricing inefficiencies or knowledge gaps that perpetually exist in the market. The payoff was not merely the numbers, it was the transformation of the individual's relationship with time. The 90 days served not to make them instantly rich, but to make them permanently secure and radically free. The constraint of the timeline forced absolute focus, turning theoretical knowledge into immediate, practiced wisdom. In conclusion, the claim. This changed my financial life in just 90 days, is an understatement. The shift was absolute, quantifiable, and permanent, achieved not through external luck, but through the ruthless prioritization of high-leverage activities and the psychological manipulation of discipline. The 90-day period functioned as an incubator for a new identity, one incapable of tolerating financial stagnation. The challenge now, for anyone reading this account, is to locate your own point of maximum financial friction. That debt, that expense, that habit that causes the most immediate psychological distress, regardless of the mathematical ranking. Identify it, isolate it, and apply the burden amputation principle immediately. Find the singular liability that, once eliminated, will provide the largest, most potent emotional release. Start the process today, right now, by creating the list of 5 items that cause you the greatest daily financial anxiety. This is the first, non-negotiable step toward establishing your own velocity grid.